We will call to order the regular board meeting of the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago. Good morning. My name is Maricel Hernandez. I'm the chairwoman. Seated to my right is Commissioner William Cressy, and to my left is Commissioner Jonathan Sweeney. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes? If not, we'll proceed with the approval of first, the minutes of the March 20th, 2018 special board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the minutes are approved. The next are the canvassing board meeting minutes of March 20th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then lastly, the regular board meeting minutes of March 27, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have approved all the meeting minutes. Next item is the Executive Director's report. Mr. Gough.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And to the board members, just to give the board members some information, we received information from the State Board of Election about our HAVA grants and how to distribute that money.
Forgot.
I'm sorry. And the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois is getting $13 million of this $380 million. It's a drop in the bucket for what we need, but it's better than nothing. We've been working on how to utilize this money. We have 5 years to utilize this grant money. So the state board has concentrated a lot on security measures. And just to let you know that Charles Holliday and Matthew Lynn on the 20th and 21st are going to in Bloomington Norval, they're having a meeting on cybersecurity, and Charles will be taking care of that for this office, this agency. So I want everybody to be aware of it. Just to let you know, I will answer any questions about the cybersecurity money, part of it's for new equipment and other items that we need. We also I had a meeting with the state board to talk about accessibility. And Steve Sandoval's and I discussed it. Zena from Equip for Equality sent him a letter, and we're having a meeting with the state board soon. I figured since they're one of the agencies that has to do with elections, they should have a part in this. It shouldn't be all on the Chicago Board of Election. So he's in total agreement. So I just wanted the board members to be aware of that. We have some other items that we're working on right now. Hopefully I should be able to give the board members this information in writing. We're still working on items with the Justice Department. We have a meeting Thursday of this week, and then I have another meeting next week. We're meeting with the Justice on accessibility, and we have a meeting with Justice about cybersecurity. So we're going to be quite busy on both fronts. So I wanted the board members to be aware of that. And basically, that's all I have right now from my board members.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holliday?
Morning, Madam Chairman, fellow commissioners. All your registration staff has scanned voter history for election day, and they're beginning to scan history for early voting just for the images. The registration department is processing registrations from the DMV, mail, IVRs, and the ERIC system. The office is helping, the other department is helping process registrations, voter history. Tomorrow we continue our weekly meetings with ES&S with the e-poll book for any proposed updates for November. And we're just beginning planning for November's election.
Okay, right. Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Good morning. In addition to the meeting that we attended with the state board going over the HAVA money, where it was an interesting debate over how to best engage all of the counties. There are smaller counties that are not willing at all to participate in cybersecurity efforts. There are some that are cautiously willing, and then there are other, it seems the larger ones are very strongly wanting to do as much as possible to tighten all the security. Coming up tomorrow, we've got a public hearing that we're jointly holding, we're hosting on behalf of the State Board of Elections on the automatic voter registration system. So the chairwoman will be speaking at that. State Board of Elections member Sandra B. Watson will be attending, as well as representatives from the State Board of Elections and the Secretary of State's office. Much of this discussion will be about the implementation, the first phase coming July 1, which merely takes in automatically changes in existing registrations without the voter having to say yes or no. So if they're already on the rolls. And then the second phase, which is the automatic part, which that'll be after the Secretary of State's office employs the Real ID system, and that's in 2019. That will be automatically capturing even new registrations if that state driver's license or state ID is rooted in a birth certificate in the United States or naturalization papers. So that way we're not automatically registering non-citizens come 2019. So we also expect to hear from a number of organizations that contributed to the development of AVR, including Operation Push, you see represented here, League of Women Voters, Chicago Votes, and the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And lastly, to follow up on an item from an earlier meeting, we're still trying to get from the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations a list of barbershops and beauty shops in the city of Chicago. We're working now with the Attorney General's Public Access Council, because they're trying to charge us like a several $100 fee for this list. We're trying to explain to them under FOIA that this is public use to try to recruit judges of election. We're not trying to sell, hair cutting equipment. So. But that's where we are with that. And that's it for now.
Jim, with respect to automatic voter registration, please
Yes.
refresh my recollection. Has it been determined the different agencies that will be the receivers of information to make these automatic changes?
Yes, there are other agencies. It's going to start with the Secretary of State's office, and that'll be where we expect the majority of the action will happen. And I think the big educational point for the public is that automatic voter registration is not going to take the entire Secretary of State database, flip a switch, and take all non-voters and make them voters. It's going to be a one-off process as people get their driver's license for the first time, or update it, or their state ID, or update it. Then it'll happen. So it'll be over the course of about 4 years. So if someone is not registered now and doesn't have to renew again until 2020, they're not going to be affected by automatic voter registration until they come in either in 2020 or before if they move for an address change. So over time it's going to be, then they're going to add to that places like Illinois Department of Public Health, I think
Professional regulation and financial.
yeah, I think IPR, professional regulation, and public aid. I'm trying to think of what other agencies, but there are several social service agencies.
What's the timeline on terms of, is there a timeline, or is that yet to be determined in terms of how these different agencies are going to be integrated into this process?
That's a good question for the state board, and we'll be sure to bring that up tomorrow. I believe it's by 2019, but I can't say for certain.
And I guess my last question is, are there, and I would not be aware personally, but you all might be, are there any state agencies that people will interact with my question is this. Part of what this automatic voter registration and this change of voter kind of thing, it presupposes ID. Meaning I go to the Secretary of State to go get my driver's license or my state ID changed or have some interaction with respect to that. It presupposes that you're, and that's I'm going to guess that's where the biggest push of these folks that are going to have changes of ID, of voter registration is going to be, because they're getting their IDs changed. I guess the question is, for the folks that are not, maybe don't have ID or choose not to have ID or what have you, are there places within the state that they would interact with that would be receivers of this information so that they could, either say that, I guess what I'm ultimately trying to get at is I want to make sure that if there are folks out here that do not have ID or have not got driver licenses or social security card, or what have you, that there's still places that if they interact with the state, that those changes can be made.
Yeah.
The short answer to that is, I don't know.
Okay.
You're right, it does presuppose that you have some sort of ID or driver's license. However, I know that, for example, Illinois Department of Employment Security is going to be one of the agencies that is going to be providing data, in addition to the Illinois Department of Financial Institutions and Public and Professional Regulation, thank you, will be. So neither one of those presupposes, I imagine, a state ID or driver's license.
But if I may interject, my recollection looking at the bill was that when you look at the agencies that are a part of it, they're the kinds of agencies where if you're doing business with them, they're going to know your residency. Secretary of State has its own requirements for what you need to prove your residency for a driver's license, and so does the licensing that you would get through professional regulation. So I think that helps with that issue.
Sure, I'm just trying to make sure there's no undue burden on the poor and indigent as it relates to this whole thing. That's where my question comes from.
And access for them.
And access, right, exactly, for the poor and indigent in particular.
Yeah.
So,
It's supposed to be anybody that has interaction with any kind of state agency. It's
Okay.
supposed to be covered. That's what the last meeting that we had before
well,
it was passed.
let's just hope, and I guess at least my encouragement is this conversation happens, is to ensure that you start with Secretary of State, but let's make sure everybody else gets rolled on very quickly, because the longer that you stay with one agency that primarily deals with IDs, the more you may be unintentionally putting a burden on folks that might interact with other agencies for whatever other reason. So.
Quick question, the other agencies that come through, are they going to be supplying information to Secretary of State to run it against the Real ID database? Or?
I do not believe so. I don't think that's part of what the law requires. We'll be, I'm sure we can bring up that question tomorrow with the State Board at the public hearing.
And the reason why we did this, we had a meeting in the beginning of the year talking about automatic voter registration. We did one over at the State of Illinois building, but it was not really attended by a lot of people. So that's why I met with Commissioner Watson, and we decided to do it here in this building. So we're going to invite the aldermen, county commissioners, and other people to this meeting. So we'll be set up downstairs in the lower level.
And even when this all comes online, we're not shutting down our voter registration. We'd still come here to get.
We're not going to shut down anything.
Okay, thank you. We'll now proceed to old business in infrastructure projects and changes in election administration. Mr. Gough, is there anything additional that you want to?
No, we are going to continue looking at new voting equipment. The election's over with, so we're going to pick that up, start running with that. Basically, all the stuff that we have, cybersecurity is going to take a big portion of our time. Not only what we're doing with making our polling places accessible, so we'll be working on that. Hopefully we'll have a meeting within the next 3 weeks with all the city agencies, so that would be a big help. I'm sorry.
Oh, and the draft of the updated plan should be coming to you very soon. So it's we're looking at it right now. So it's going to incorporate some of the concerns that both Commissioner Cressy and Commissioner Swain raised about expanded vote by mail and trying to make sure that we have additional safeguards and the equivalent of judges of election making the calls on signature verification, and a third party if there's a tiebreaker needed to be able to settle those. So.
So, I think we've addressed all the old business. Oh, except for legislation. Mr. Lasker, is there anything yet?
Well, for most of the bills we're tracking are still stuck in committees. However, that Senate Bill 2273 deals with the ERIC registration system. That has passed both houses as of April 19th, I think that was. So we're still waiting for a signature from the governor, but that could become law soon.
And we're prepared for that. Very
Yeah,
happy
that's-
we've been pushing that.
Yeah, we've been a member of that program already.
Great. We'll go on to new business, and we have a professional services agreement between the Board of Election Commissioners and A&E Data Solutions, LLC. And I believe this is an extension?
Jim, you've been working with that.
A&E, formerly K-Design, came on in 2013 to help us put the website on a new platform that was more flexible in terms of multilingual content so that you could navigate the entire site, not only in English. You wouldn't have to go to an English page and then find the Spanish or Chinese connection. You could start on a home page in each language and then navigate the entire site from there. Additionally, they were with us when we were going to a more flexible and expandable off-site server platform after we encountered some issues here. So they've been very successful in making sure that, working with the server provider to make sure that the site is very flexible. More recently, they've worked with us on both the online vote by mail application and the development of a replacement for the military overseas online ballot accessing system. I want to emphasize that the military overseas voters do not vote online. They're able to access their ballot, mark it, print it out, and mail it to us. So there is no online voting, but they can obtain that ballot if they receive their ballot, damage it. If they don't receive their paper ballot, there's still, this is a backstop. So they've been with us now for 5 years, and they've done very good work with us. They've been very responsive on vote by mail and all of our other issues, and I strongly recommend we continue working.
Is there any, and forgive me, but if I missed it, but is there any indemnification related to security or anything of that nature that's in this contract? They indemnify us based on their either negligence or some action, some flipping of a switch, or something of that nature?
No, and here's why. After some earlier events prior to their engagement, we made the determination that any kind of sensitive information is going to be housed here on the board servers, and the only way a problem could occur is if our agency errantly pushed out files with sensitive information, whether they're voter registration data or anything else. So we've designed the website to assume that it could be 100% hacked and nothing would be gained from it. No sensitive information, no private information at all. So to your question, I don't think there's anything to indemnify because we've made it very secure. The only way that something could go wrong with this, again, is if our IT department errantly pushed out information that they're not supposed to, and they've been very good about not to.
So I hope so. So there's no concern about, with presuming that our site was 100% hacked, that something can be written in some kind of coding that would go into our system and draw the information out? We're very secure about that.
No, this is an entirely off-campus set of servers, set of programs that are totally separate from our voter registration database
Okay.
here. So they pull an export of a very limited amount of data. Doesn't even include, for example, condo unit numbers. So you have to know the address, and it's nothing more than what's available already on a poll sheet with the name
Okay.
and address of the voter, and then their voting districts. So, and then whether or not they've used, for example, early voting or vote by mail. That's all public information. So we've made it, tried to make it as safe as possible. I mean, if you still think that there's something to indemnify, we can talk with them.
Well, there is a section in section 11, Commissioner, regarding indemnification and holding the board harmless.
I did want to point that out, that there is a rather standard indemnification clause. There's also in paragraph 8, the requirement to sign the board standard confidentiality and acceptable use agreement, which does deal in more detail with the use of our data. So if there is any misuse that somehow does happen, I do think
We
that
have
we're
a
pretty
cause
well
of
covered.
action
Yeah, we
and-
do,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we're
I think that
adequately
Jim is
protected.
correct. It's very unlikely these things could even happen, but we do have ourselves protected.
Are there any further questions?
Not at all.
If not, is there a motion to approve the agreement with A&E Data Solutions LLC for the term of April 1st, 2018 through March 31st, 2020 in the amount of $100,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the agreement is approved. Next on the agenda is the legal report. Mr. Lasker?
Well, what I would like to report is that you may recall that the board is a nominal defendant in the case of Segovia versus the United States. There are some citizens who are challenging a federal law that deals with voting in certain U.S. territories. So we are a defendant because there are some of the plaintiffs live in Chicago. Some of the plaintiffs also live in Rock Island, which is another defendant, and other areas. So none of the board's actions or conduct are at issue, but the federal law is at issue. This case has been decided in favor of the U.S. government at the district court level and at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, but the plaintiffs have now filed a petition of writ for certiorari at the U.S. Supreme Court. The board's position here in its briefing previously in the case has really been to inform the court as to what it's like for an election authority to operate under this law. The U.S. government, of course, is defending its own statute. Our position, there's nothing new to add at the Supreme Court level. We operate under this law, and so we are not going to take a position against the petition for writ of certiorari, nor are we going to take any position against the several requests to file amicus briefs that we've been receiving. We've heard, for example, from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, from the Virgin Islands Bar Association, and from a political science professor at the Columbia University, New York, are among the several groups that want to file amicus briefs. This is really the federal government's issue, so we won't stand in the way of the full debate happening if the case gets accepted by the court.
Great, thank you. We'll proceed with the financial reports. The first one is a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago, the 2018 appropriation number 18-04 dated May 22nd, 2018, in the amount of $748,503.04. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook, 2018 appropriation number 18-04 dated May 22nd, 2018, in the amount of $686,394. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And the two balance sheets are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. I have not received any requests for public comment, so we will proceed with, Mr. Lasker. Is there a need for executive session today?
Not today, no.
No? Okay. In that case, is there a motion to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on June 12th, 2018?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.